The summer heat pressed down on the empty highway like a heavy blanket. John Cena gripped the steering wheel of his black Jeep, muscles still burning from their brutal workout session. Beside him, Dwayne Johnson stretched his massive frame, both men riding the high that came after pushing their bodies to the limit. They had discovered this hidden gym months ago, a place where serious athletes trained without cameras or crowds watching their every move. "Man, I think you actually lifted more today," Dwayne admitted, cracking his neck. "But don't let it go to your head." John laughed, the sound mixing with the warm wind rushing through the open windows. "Coming from you, that's basically a medal of honor." Their friendship had grown strong over the years, built on mutual respect and countless hours spent pushing each other to be better. Both had climbed mountains in their careers, but moments like this reminded them of simpler times when it was just about the love of competition and brotherhood. The gas gauge needle pointed dangerously close to empty. John spotted a small station ahead, looking like it belonged in a different decade. One crooked pump stood under a flickering light, attached to a convenience store with peeling paint and dusty windows. "Looks like something out of an old movie," Dwayne observed as they pulled into the cracked parking lot. "Perfect. No crowds, no phones in our faces," John replied, stepping out to fuel up. The peaceful silence was broken by something unexpected. Near the vending machines outside the store stood a young boy, maybe 10 years old, holding a handmade cardboard sign. His curly hair caught the golden light, and his faded blue hoodie told stories of a family that worked hard for everything they had. But it was his sign that stopped John in his tracks. In bright, colorful letters, carefully drawn by small hands, it read, "You're my champions." John's heart skipped. This kid had somehow known they would be here, had made this sign just in case. The boy's dark eyes went wide as he recognized them, his mouth falling open in pure disbelief. "No way," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. "You're really John Cena. And that's The Rock." Dwayne emerged from the store just in time to hear it, his famous smile spreading across his face. "In the flesh, little man." The boy, Tyler, looked ready to explode with joy. His hands shook as he held up the sign higher, wanting them to see every detail. "I watch all your matches. Every single one. You guys taught me to never give up, no matter what." John crouched down, bringing himself to Tyler's eye level. The boy's excitement was infectious, reminding him why he had fallen in love with entertaining people in the first place. "You made this all by yourself?" Tyler nodded, suddenly shy under the attention of his heroes. "Yeah, I wanted to show it to someone, just in case you ever came by. I know it sounds crazy, but I hope maybe someday." "Well, guess what?" Dwayne said, kneeling beside them. "You made it happen. That takes real heart, kid." As they posed for pictures with Tyler, other people began to notice. A few teenagers pulled out phones. An elderly couple smiled from nearby. The moment was becoming something magical, the kind of interaction that reminded everyone present why heroes mattered. But not everyone was enjoying the scene. At the far end of the parking lot, under the shadow of a rusted billboard, 4 bikers sat on their motorcycles like vultures waiting for prey. Their leather vests were covered in patches that spoke of violence and rebellion. Beer cans littered the ground around them, and their eyes held the cold calculation of people who enjoyed causing pain. Their leader, Roy, was a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks and a snake tattoo that wrapped around his thick neck. He watched the heartwarming scene with disgust, his lips curling into a sneer that promised trouble. "Look at these 2 clowns," Roy muttered, flicking his cigarette toward the pump. "Big-time wrestlers playing superhero with some kid. Makes me sick." Another biker, thin and wiry with a beard that hadn't seen a razor in months, spat on the ground. "I bet those muscles are all for show. Probably wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real street fight." The third member of their group, a woman with sun-damaged skin and cruel eyes, pointed toward Tyler with obvious contempt. "And what's that little brat doing here with a stupid sign? Shouldn't be hanging around decent folk." Roy's sneer deepened into something darker. "Disgusting. All of it." At his feet, a large German shepherd lay alert, its black and tan coat gleaming despite the dust. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, trained to respond to its master's commands with absolute obedience. Roy gave the leash a sharp tug, and the animal lifted its head, baring teeth that had been taught to intimidate and attack. Meanwhile, Tyler continued talking excitedly to his heroes, showing them drawings he had made of wrestling moves and championship belts. His pure joy was infectious, drawing smiles from everyone watching. For a few precious minutes, the world felt exactly as it should be. That's when Roy stood up. "Let's go say hello," he announced to his crew, his voice carrying the promise of violence. "See if these superstars still smile when things get real." The four bikers began walking slowly across the lot, their boots crunching on gravel with each deliberate step. The atmosphere shifted instantly, like storm clouds rolling in to block out the sun. The teenagers quickly retreated into the store. The elderly couple hurried to their car. Even the gas station clerk quietly locked the front door. But Tyler hadn't noticed them yet, still lost in the magic of meeting his heroes. The change in atmosphere was immediate and electric. John Cena and Dwayne Johnson had spent years reading crowds, understanding the shift in energy that could turn celebration into chaos. Their postures remained relaxed, but their eyes sharpened with the alertness of experienced fighters who recognized approaching danger. Tyler continued chattering excitedly, oblivious to the threat moving toward them like a slow-moving storm. He was showing Dwayne a sketch he had drawn of the championship belt, his small fingers tracing the details he had memorized from countless hours of watching matches. Well. Roy's voice cut through the evening air like a rusty blade. "Ain't this a sweet little picture? Big men, big fans, and a little street rat with a sign." The words hit the group like a physical blow. Tyler's smile faltered as he turned to see the four bikers approaching. His mother, who had been watching from their car, stepped out with worry etched across her face. Dwayne's smile vanished completely. John stood up slowly, his movement controlled but ready. Both men had dealt with hostile crowds before, but this felt different. More personal, more dangerous. "You got a problem?" John asked, his voice calm, but carrying an undertone that suggested Roy should choose his next words very carefully. Roy laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Just wondering what kind of man needs a fan club to feel important. You two looking for applause, or are you just lost?" The insult was designed to provoke, but John and Dwayne had heard worse. What bothered them was the way Roy's eyes kept drifting to Tyler, the predatory calculation in his gaze that suggested the boy was his real target. Tyler instinctively moved closer to Dwayne, who stepped sideways to shield him. The protective gesture wasn't lost on anyone present. This wasn't about ego or territory anymore. It was about something much more fundamental. "Careful how you talk, man," Dwayne said, his voice carrying the weight of barely controlled power. "This isn't the place to act tough." Roy's companions spread out slightly, forming a loose semicircle. The woman cracked her knuckles with obvious anticipation. The bearded man's hand drifted toward something hanging from his belt. The fourth biker, younger but no less dangerous, kept glancing between the two celebrities as if measuring their weaknesses. But Roy's attention remained fixed on Tyler. He took another step closer, and his sneer deepened into something truly ugly. "What's your name, kid?" Roy asked, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Or should I just call you Monkey? That work for you?" The words hit Tyler like a physical slap. The boy's face went pale, his hands clutching his sign tighter. His mother gasped from across the parking lot, starting to move toward them, but afraid to get too close. John's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. Dwayne took a single step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Roy. Both men had faced every kind of opponent imaginable, but bullies who targeted children were in a category all their own. "You like dogs, boy," Roy continued, jerking the leash to bring his German shepherd to attention. The animal rose to its feet, muscles coiled and ready. "This one's got a nose for weakness." The threat was clear and immediate. The dog had been trained as a weapon, conditioned to attack on command. Its eyes were alert but empty of the warmth that should exist between human and animal. This wasn't a pet. It was a tool for intimidation and violence. Tyler's voice shook, but he managed to speak. "You're just a bully. They're better than you'll ever be." The words were brave beyond the boy's years, spoken with a conviction that would have made any parent proud. But they also sealed his fate in Roy's twisted mind. Roy's eyes darkened with genuine rage. "What did you say, brat?" "I said they're heroes," Tyler repeated, his voice gaining strength. "You're nothing." The parking lot fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the low growl building in the German shepherd's throat. Everyone present understood that a line had been crossed, that whatever happened next would change everything. Roy's face contorted with fury. Years of resentment, jealousy, and hatred boiled over in that moment. He had spent his life taking what he wanted through fear and violence, and now this child was defying him in front of witnesses. It was intolerable. The leash went slack in his hands as Roy made his decision. "Get him!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the lot. The German shepherd exploded into motion, its powerful legs driving it forward with frightening speed. Its bark was sharp and vicious as it charged straight at Tyler, who stood frozen with terror. But the dog never reached its target. Dwayne Johnson moved like lightning, throwing his massive body between the child and the attacking animal. He caught the German shepherd in mid-leap, his hands finding its collar as it snarled and snapped inches from his face. The impact drove him backward, but his grip held firm. "Easy, boy," Dwayne grunted, his voice calm despite the chaos. "You don't know what you're doing." The dog struggled wildly, its training warring with confusion. This man wasn't acting like prey. He wasn't running or screaming. Instead, he was speaking in soothing tones while maintaining complete control. John was already moving, his target clear. He stepped directly into Roy's path, grabbing the biker by the front of his vest and slamming him against the gas pump with enough force to make the entire structure shudder. "You tried to sick a dog on a child," John growled, his voice carrying the promise of consequences. "You crossed the line." Roy tried to swing a punch, but John was ready. He ducked under the wild haymaker, pivoted with the fluid grace of a trained athlete, and drove a clean, powerful punch into Roy's stomach. The biker doubled over, gasping for air. The other three bikers began advancing, but Dwayne had managed to calm the German shepherd. The dog now sat obediently at his side, looking confused but no longer aggressive. Dwayne turned to face the approaching threat, cracking his knuckles with deliberate slowness. "You really want to do this?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of mountains. The fight hadn't truly started yet, but everyone knew it was inevitable. The bikers had weapons, experience, and the desperate fury of cornered animals. But John and Dwayne had something more powerful, the absolute certainty that they were protecting something precious. Tyler stood behind them, his sign now forgotten, watching his heroes prepare to defend him with everything they had. The parking lot transformed into a battlefield in the space of a heartbeat. What had begun as a peaceful stop for gas became something primal and necessary. A confrontation between good and evil played out under flickering fluorescent lights. Roy straightened up from John's punch, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. His eyes burned with humiliation and rage. Being handled so easily by someone he considered a fake fighter had shattered his carefully constructed image of dominance. "So what now, Hollywood heroes?" Roy snarled, gesturing to his advancing crew. "You going to save the day with your shiny smiles and gym muscles?" The other bikers had retrieved their weapons. The wiry one with the greasy beard hefted a length of chain, letting it swing menacingly. Another gripped a rusted pipe that looked like it had been waiting years for this moment. The woman cracked her knuckles again, her face twisted with anticipation. "You attacked a child," John said, his voice carrying the cold certainty of absolute moral clarity. "You think this is about ego. It's about decency." Dwayne kept one hand near the German shepherd, who remained calm at his side. The dog seemed to understand that its previous master was the source of the chaos, not these new protectors. "And you," Dwayne added, his gaze locked on Roy. "You use that animal like a weapon. You don't deserve to own a goldfish, let alone a dog." Roy spat blood onto the cracked pavement. "I don't need lectures from actors who pretend to fight on TV." "Let's see how much pretending this is," Dwayne replied. The first biker lunged at John with the chain, swinging it in a wide arc meant to wrap around his opponent's neck. But John had spent years studying real combat. Not just choreographed entertainment. He ducked under the swing, stepped inside the biker's reach, and grabbed his wrist with iron fingers. A sharp twist sent the chain clattering to the ground. A harder twist sent the biker sprawling after it. His arm bent at an angle that suggested he wouldn't be swinging anything for a while. The man with the pipe charged Dwayne from the side, aiming for his ribs with enough force to shatter bone. Dwayne turned just enough to take the blow on his heavily muscled forearm, the impact producing a sound like a baseball bat hitting a tree trunk. The pipe wielder's eyes widened in shock at Dwayne's complete lack of reaction. Dwayne's elbow found the attacker's jaw with surgical precision. The man's eyes rolled back, and he dropped like a marionette with cut strings. The pipe bounced twice before rolling under a parked car. Roy produced a knife from somewhere in his jacket, a wicked-looking blade that caught the light as he waved it threateningly. "Don't hold back," he shouted to his remaining fighters. "Wipe the smiles off their faces." The woman rushed Dwayne with surprising speed, her fists flying in combinations that spoke of real training. She was faster than her companions, more skilled, and far more dangerous. But Dwayne had faced opponents who made her look like a beginner. He slipped her first punch, caught her wrist on the second, and used her own momentum to spin her around. A gentle but irresistible sweep took her legs, and she hit the pavement with a satisfying thud. She tried to get up, shook her head once, and decided to stay down. The bearded biker had recovered from his earlier fall and charged John again, this time attempting a desperate tackle. John let him come, timing his movement perfectly. He stepped aside at the last possible moment, caught the man's shoulder, and used his own charging momentum to flip him over in a textbook hip toss. The biker hit the ground so hard that nearby car alarms went off. Roy slashed with his knife, a wild swing aimed at John's midsection. John twisted away from the blade, caught Roy's wrist, and applied pressure to specific points that made the biker's fingers go numb. The knife fell, landing near Tyler's feet with a metallic clang. He dropped it. Tyler shouted, pointing at the weapon. Roy roared in frustration and dove for the knife, but Dwayne was already moving. His long stride covered the distance in seconds, and his boot sent the blade skittering across the parking lot and into the darkness beyond the lights. Roy threw a wild punch at Dwayne's head. Dwayne blocked it casually, almost gently, then responded with a body shot that doubled Roy over like a folding chair. The biker staggered backward, gasping for air that wouldn't come. One of the fallen bikers managed to get behind John and attempted a choke hold, wrapping his arm around the wrestler's thick neck. It was a move that might have worked on someone smaller, someone with less training, someone who hadn't spent years learning to escape from every possible hold. John dropped his weight, driving his elbow backward into his attacker's ribs. The man's grip loosened immediately. A sharp shoulder throw sent him flying over John's head to land in a heap near the convenience store entrance. Two of Roy's crew tried to double-team Dwayne, one grabbing each arm while preparing to rain punches down on his head. It was a tactic that worked on normal people, but Dwayne Johnson was not normal people. He stomped hard on the foot of the man, holding his left arm, feeling small bones crack under his boot. That attacker released him immediately, hopping backward on one foot while cursing creatively. The other man found himself caught in a bear hug that lifted him completely off the ground. Dwayne carried him 3 steps and tossed him gently into a stack of empty crates. The crash was spectacular, but the man would live to make better choices. The parking lot had become a scene from an action movie, but with real consequences. Phones appeared in windows as people filmed from safe distances. Someone was shouting encouragement. Another voice called for them to finish it. But Roy wasn't finished. Bloodied, winded, and humiliated, he still had one card left to play. "You think this is over?" he gasped, struggling to his feet. "I've got more boys coming. You won't leave this town in one piece." Dwayne stepped toward him, the German shepherd padding alongside like a loyal companion who had finally found worthy pack leaders. "You're done, Roy," Dwayne said with absolute finality. "Call off your dogs before you get buried next to them." Roy's response was to charge one final time, his hands reaching for John's throat with desperate fury. He had nothing left but rage and the muscle memory of 100-bar fights. John caught him mid-charge, lifting Roy completely off his feet with an ease that made the watching crowd gasp in amazement. "You can't see me," John said, holding the biker high above his head. Then he brought Roy down in a perfect attitude adjustment, driving him into the cracked pavement with enough force to end the fight once and for all. The silence that followed Roy's devastating impact with the pavement was profound and complete. Even the distant highway traffic seemed to pause in respect for what had just transpired. Roy lay motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest, his earlier bravado replaced by the unconsciousness of the thoroughly defeated. The remaining bikers who could still move began retreating toward their motorcycles, limping and cursing, but clearly unwilling to continue a fight they had no hope of winning. One of them, the woman who had shown such initial enthusiasm for violence, paused long enough to look back. "This ain't over," she called out, but her voice lacked conviction. It was the kind of threat people made when they needed to preserve some shred of dignity in defeat. Neither John nor Dwayne responded. They had heard similar promises, countless times, from people who never followed through. Empty threats from empty people were just noise. Tyler ran forward, his face glowing with hero worship and relief. "You guys were amazing," he said, breathless with excitement and residual fear. "I knew you'd protect me." John smiled, placing a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder. Despite the violence that had just occurred, his touch was soft and reassuring. "You okay, champ?" The boy nodded vigorously, his earlier terror replaced by the security that came from seeing his heroes live up to everything he had believed about them. "I knew you wouldn't let him hurt me." "We've got your back," Dwayne said, ruffling Tyler's hair with the same hand that had just ended a fight. "Always." The German shepherd, who had remained calm throughout the entire confrontation, approached Tyler cautiously. The boy looked at the animal with curiosity rather than fear, understanding somehow that the dog had been as much a victim as anyone else. "He's not scary anymore," Tyler said, reaching out to pet the dog's head. The shepherd's tail wagged slowly, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about the difference between forced aggression and natural gentleness. "Animals aren't born mean," Dwayne explained, watching the interaction with approval. "Bad people teach them to do bad things, but with the right care, they can learn to be good again." In the distance, sirens began to wail. The sound grew louder as police cruisers approached, their red and blue lights painting the parking lot in alternating colors. Someone had called for help, though the situation was clearly well in hand. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, followed by an ambulance. Officers emerged with weapons drawn until they assessed the scene. Several injured bikers, 2 very large and very calm celebrities, and a small boy who was obviously safe and unharmed. Officer Martinez, a 20-year veteran with gray temples and intelligent eyes, holstered his weapon and approached. "What happened here?" Dwayne stepped forward, his voice calm and factual. "Self-defense and protection of a minor. That man," he pointed to the still unconscious Roy, "sicked a trained attack dog on a child. When we intervened, he and his friends came at us with weapons." Martinez looked around at the evidence, scattered chains, a rusty pipe, and multiple witnesses nodding in agreement. The story was clear enough, and the good guys were easy to identify. Tyler's mother rushed over, having finally worked up the courage to leave the safety of her car. She wrapped her son in a fierce hug while addressing the officers. "They saved us," she said, tears streaming down her face. "If these men hadn't been here, I don't know what would have happened to Tyler." Other witnesses came forward, each confirming the same basic facts. The bikers had been the aggressors. The celebrities had acted only to protect an innocent child. Justice was clear-cut for once. Roy was loaded onto a stretcher, still unconscious, but breathing normally. He would wake up in a hospital bed, with handcuffs on his wrists and serious charges pending. His crew members who could walk were arrested on the spot, their weapons collected as evidence. As Roy's stretcher was loaded into the ambulance, he stirred briefly, his eyes finding John's face. Even in his defeated state, hatred burned there. "You humiliated me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'll remember this." John leaned closer, his expression serious. "You should remember the kid you tried to hurt. Remember that you chose to be the villain in this story, and it didn't work out for you. The ambulance doors closed, muffling any response Roy might have made. Animal control arrived in a separate van, having been called to deal with the German Shepherd. But when they saw the dog sitting calmly beside Dwayne, tail wagging gently as Tyler continued to pet him, they paused. "This is the dangerous animal?" the animal control officer asked, clearly confused. "He was trained to attack," Dwayne explained. "But dogs want to please the people they respect. He just needed better leadership." The officer nodded, understanding immediately. "We'll evaluate him properly. Maybe find him a good home. Cases like this usually work out well when the dog gets proper care." Dwayne gave the shepherd one final pat. "You're going to be okay, buddy. Just needed to find the right pack." As the various emergency vehicles began to leave, taking the last evidence of violence with them, the parking lot started to feel normal again. The gas station's tired lights flickered as they always had, but something fundamental had changed. Tyler approached his heroes one more time, holding a fresh drawing he had managed to create while sitting on the curb. This one showed John and Dwayne standing protectively in front of the gas station, Tyler between them with his sign, and the German Shepherd sitting loyally beside them all. Above the scene, in bold letters, were the words, "My protectors." John accepted the drawing with the reverence usually reserved for priceless artifacts. "This is incredible, Tyler. Thank you. It's so you don't forget," Tyler said simply. Dwayne smiled. "Forget? This is going straight into a frame. Best gift I've gotten all year." As they prepared to leave, Tyler's mother approached one final time. "I still don't know how to thank you," she said. "You reminded me that there are still good people in the world." "We're all responsible for each other," John replied. "Couldn't stand by and let that happen." They watched as Tyler and his mother drove away, the boy waving from the back window until they disappeared around a bend in the highway. The gas station was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. The kind that comes after storms pass, and the world reorganizes itself around new truths. The purple twilight settled over the gas station like a gentle blanket, transforming the scene of recent violence into something almost peaceful. John Cena and Dwayne Johnson stood beside their Jeep, watching the last police car disappear down the highway with its cargo of defeated bullies. The parking lot bore scars from the confrontation, scuffed pavement, scattered debris, the lingering echo of violence, but these would fade with time. What wouldn't fade was the memory of what had happened here, and the lives that had been changed forever. Tyler's drawing remained in John's jacket pocket, pressed close to his heart like a talisman. Every few minutes, he found himself touching it, making sure it was still there. The simple sketch represented something far more valuable than any championship belt or movie contract. It was proof that heroism still mattered, that standing up for what's right could make a real difference in the world. "You think we'll hear from Tyler again?" Dwayne asked, leaning against the Jeep as he watched the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. "Kids like that don't forget," John replied. "He'll carry this with him for the rest of his life. Not the scary parts, but the part where he learned that people will stand up for him when it matters." A new vehicle pulled into the lot, the animal control van returning with news about the German Shepherd. The officer who emerged wore a smile that immediately put them at ease. "Good news about the dog," she announced. "We've got a retired police officer who specializes in rehabilitating former working dogs. He's already agreed to take him. Says animals like this usually make the best pets once they learn they don't have to be weapons anymore." Dwayne nodded with satisfaction. Sometimes everyone deserves a second chance to be who they really are. The officer climbed back into her van, but before driving away, she rolled down her window. "What you two did tonight, that's going to be talked about for years. Not just the fighting, but the way you stepped up for that kid. People need to see that." As she drove away, John and Dwayne found themselves alone in the quiet parking lot. The gas station attendant finally emerged from inside, having waited until he was certain the danger had passed. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and hands stained from years of honest work. "I want to thank you," he said simply. "I've seen those bikers before. They come through here sometimes, always looking for trouble. Someone was going to get hurt eventually. I'm glad it was them instead of that boy." He paused, then continued. I called the local news station. They're going to want to interview you. But I told them you'd probably be gone by then. Some stories are better left to grow on their own. John smiled. You did the right thing. All of it. The attendant nodded and returned to his work, but his movements seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. This place would be safer now, protected by the knowledge that heroes had once stood in its parking lot and refused to let evil win. As they prepared to finally leave, Dwayne pulled out his phone and made a quiet call. John listened to one side of the conversation, understanding immediately who was being contacted and why. Yeah, it's me, Dwayne said. I need you to set up a college fund. Anonymous donor. Kid named Tyler. Lives near Highway 45. No, I don't want any publicity. Just make sure his education is covered, all the way through graduation. He hung up and caught John's questioning look. Every hero needs the chance to become whatever they're meant to be, Dwayne explained. That kid's got something special. The world needs more people like him. John nodded approvingly, then made his own call. Within minutes, he had arranged for Tyler's family to receive season tickets to wrestling events in their area, along with backstage passes and a personal invitation to attend any show they wanted. Dreams should come true when kids are brave enough to believe in heroes, John said, ending his call. They climbed into the Jeep and sat quietly for a moment, neither quite ready to leave. This place had become significant, a spot where ordinary people had chosen to do extraordinary things, where a child's courage had inspired adults to be better than they thought possible. You know what the best part was? John asked as he started the engine. What's that? Tyler wasn't surprised that we helped him. He expected it. In his mind, heroes are supposed to protect people who can't protect themselves. It never occurred to him that we might walk away. Dwayne considered this. Maybe that's what real heroism is. Not the dramatic moments, but living up to what good people expect from you, even when no one's watching. They pulled out of the parking lot slowly, taking one last look at the place, where they had discovered something important about themselves. The gas station's tired sign flickered as they passed, casting brief shadows across the road ahead. As they drove into the night, John reached into his pocket and touched Tyler's drawing once more. In a few hours, they would be back to their normal lives, training sessions, movie sets, public appearances, and the constant pressure of fame. But they would carry this night with them forever, a reminder of why their success mattered and how they should use it. Think we changed anything tonight? Dwayne asked as the highway opened up before them. John smiled, thinking of Tyler's face when he realized his heroes were real, thinking of a German shepherd who would learn to be gentle again, thinking of bullies who would spend a long time remembering what happened when they chose the wrong targets. Everything, he said simply. We changed everything. The Jeep disappeared into the darkness, carrying two men who had rediscovered what it meant to be heroes. Behind them, the gas station settled into its normal quiet routine, but the story of what had happened there would spread in the way that important stories always do, from person to person, growing stronger with each telling, inspiring others to stand up when their moment came. Tyler would grow up knowing that heroes were real because he had met them. Roy would serve his time knowing that bullies eventually faced justice. And somewhere in between those two truths, the world became a slightly better place because good people chose to act when action was needed. The drawing in John's pocket contained more truth than any newspaper article or news report could capture. Sometimes heroes really do show up exactly when they're needed most, and sometimes a child's faith in goodness is enough to change everything. The highway stretched ahead, leading them home but carrying them forward into whatever challenges awaited. They were ready for anything, strengthened by the knowledge that when it truly mattered, they had not failed the trust placed in them by a brave boy with a handmade sign and an unshakable belief that heroes would always do the right thing. And they always would.